Let's start with something that fascinated me, and we talked about this at lunch today. There was a 16-year period. Now, you were raised Catholic, you were cradle Catholic, born and bred Catholic, but for 16 years, the furthest thing from your mind was God, the church, the whole 10 yards. Why?
Well, basically sin, the fall of Adam and Eve, concupiscence. And I probably would make St. Augustine blush. He's one of my favorite saints, I suppose, because he spelled out to some extent, not in details, that's good, just to be general, but he was a very sinful man. And he was, in a way, an inspiration to me in returning to the church after 16 years, because I thought that at least I could do as well as he did afterwards. But pretty braggadocious, right? I'll never write and never explain anything the way he did, but I'm talking mostly about his immoral life and his resurrection from spiritual death.
Did it feel like a spiritual death to you being away for 16 years?
Of us who fall into such degradation that it becomes comfortable. Not that we don't know it, it's just somewhat comfortable. And I thought I was dying, and it turned out to be pleurisy, and I was over it in 3 months. But I'd already been sucked in by our Lord by coming back because I thought I was dying, and I really was dying. It was dying in every theological sense of the word. It's on me, and so when I returned to the church, my first thought was to become a saint. Really, to be a saint. And it was difficult because bad habits are hard to shake, good habits are hard to acquire. So I think that probably I began to realize the need to do something more than just teach and lead a good life as a layman. And Father Brendan Sherry saw that I was reading the one volume of Christian prayer, and he gave me his best friend's 3 volume of the British Collins, and I fell in love with it. Every hour of the office appealed to me. It was literature, which I liked, partly, but it was very spiritual, and I learned to like authors like St. Augustine, St. John Chrysostom, many of the other early fathers who were the writers, and it occurred to me one day that I might stand before God and he would say, "Whom did you bring with you?" And I'd have to say, nobody. Nobody. I didn't evangelize. I lived the faith through prayer, but I didn't go about trying to convince somebody else that the Catholic Church was where he really ought to be. And then it led to Bishop Mathieson interfering in my life, and for 7 years when I would see him, he always recognized me, even in the cathedral when I think it was a Holy Week, and he was exiting down the aisle of St. Lawrence, and he said, "What are you doing here? How come you're not back up in Perryton helping?" I think it was Monsignor Ray Crozier may have been there at the time. And he asked me if consider the priesthood, and I said, "No, don't ask me anymore. I wouldn't like to be a priest. I wouldn't like to dress in their funny clothes, and I just like teaching, and I think I'm pretty good at it, and so I'll stay there." And so he asked me when I retired, if I would at least consider it, and I said yes. And I retired, and I went to Junction, Texas to spend time trying to decide what I would do with my life, and I thought, Mexico? And I said, I won't come back until I look and sound and smell just like Mexico. And everybody at Perryton and Spearman thought I'd gone to Mexico. But I thought of what Bishop Mathieson asked me, and one day I knelt down by the side door of St. Teresa Church in Junction. And the cathedral was at the tabernacle was at a side altar, and I could see the tabernacle and the red vigil lamp just inside the window. And I knelt there and I said, if you'll take away the thoughts that I keep having of going to the Trappist monastery, I'll see about entering the seminary. And it went away almost forthwith. And then when I was walking in the evening in the park, I thought, oh, well, that was just coincidence. And then shortly after, the thought came to my mind, you're a liar. You made a bargain, and you're not keeping it. So I said, oh, well, okay. If that's the way you want it, well, okay. My friend, Father Bill at Junction, said, call or write to Bishop Mathieson and ask him. And I thought, oh, well, one more obstacle won't hurt. I won't go anyway. He'll probably say, well, John, you were about 51 when I asked you. Now you're 62, going on 63, and you're old and you're dumb. And so, no, why don't you do something else in parish life, maybe? But he wrote a beautiful note on just maybe a 3x5, and I don't remember it. I wish I did, because I used to show it to the other seminarians, and they were overwhelmed by it. So Bishop Mathieson put me in contact with Monsignor Keeler at Borger at that time, and I used to see him by going to Mass with my brother-in-law in Borger, and he had a good influence on my life. Especially I went to weekly confession, and every morning when I went into his church, Saturday morning, I was staying with Monsignor Rex Nickel in Perryton that one summer, and I saw things in Monsignor Keeler being close to the confessional, saying his prayers, and I loved that. So I followed the instructions, the outline for getting in, and I was one of the last ones chosen for the Holy Apostles. They had 33 students that year, and I was the last one chosen, probably because of my antiquity, and I don't know what else it could have been, but I went and I stayed, and I tried to leave within 2 weeks, and Sister Mary Reagan, who was the Dean of Studies, said, if you try to leave this place, I'll have all the priests and I too, and we'll lie down in the street so you can't go. And so I stayed.
There was something you were talking about when we were doing this just a minute ago. You talked about the influence of your mother, but there were 3 of her good friends that also did a little prodding and pushing on you before you left South Texas.
Yes, when I, about 3 years before I retired from teaching in Perryton, I went to visit one of my sisters. I hadn't been in the hometown area for 23 years after my mother died, and an old Czech woman followed us out of church, and she said, hey, John, when are you leaving? And I said, tomorrow, Martha. And she said, when are you going to the seminary? And I said, never, Martha. And she said, heck, you ain't. Your mother made me and these 3 women behind her promise to pray for you. And that's a promise, isn't it? One I should have learned from it. To pray for you until you went into seminary. Now get in there. We got other people to pray for.
Mom.
I'll miss the friends that I've made. I kind of liked being chaplain at Baptist Hospital for almost 4 years, because nearly every week was like a homecoming. Nearly every week I encountered former students and members of their family. And I've lived here since 1963, so it's like leaving a part of the heart.
I don't know if